that as I studied this sermon series, I searched for some kind of metaphorical statement that would adequately sum up the lessons that are in the heart of the book of Numbers. And I found one. So I told them on Wednesday, and I kind of just left that with them. That's probably quite unfair. So here it is. And Jewish aphorism. It's a Jewish saying. And it's often used by the rabbis when discussing the book of Numbers. God has time, and the wilderness has sand. Now that sounds very Jewish, doesn't it? I can kind of just hear Tevye from Fiddler on the Roof saying something like that. Oh, it's God has time, and the wilderness has sand. But what in the world does it mean? Well, I shall explain. All true biblical understanding is based on a solid conviction of the overwhelming grace of God as he described himself in Exodus chapter 34, verses 6 and 7. I'll read it to you. The Lord, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, keeping steadfast love for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, but who will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children and the children's children to the third and fourth generations. And the people of Israel, whom God had redeemed, those whom he had delivered from Egypt and had been made alive in him, when these people rebelled against him in the wilderness, as we shall discover, when they said no to action and no thanks to his leadership, they risked destruction. Remember that dialogue that took place between Moses and God? But God, who is rich in mercy, did not annihilate them. He did not make an end to them. Rather, he allowed his erring people to live out the rest of their lives in the wilderness. Because God has time, and he allowed their children to bury them. For the wilderness has sand. Then to the next generation the challenge was given. Would they be like their parents and say no to God, or would they follow him as he would lead them into the land of promise? Well, God has time and the wilderness has sand. If the second generation behaved as their mothers and fathers had, they too would be buried in the sands of the wilderness. It's a sobering thought. And it is a thought that has application all the way down through history as God deals with his people. God is patient. God is just. God has time. But God is willing to begin again.